Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the College of Continuing and Professional Studies webinar, Inclusive and Impactful Leadership. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next slide, please. It's a pleasure to have you all here this afternoon. My name is Shanta Bulai, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. If you have future questions about this webinar or other programs we offer, the college's contact information will be on the last slide of this presentation. I'm delighted to introduce the topic for today's webinar, Inclusive and Impactful Leadership. Today's workplace continues to be a place of opportunity for learning and expanding our understanding of each other. At times, it can feel challenging as if things are not progressing, especially in the areas of inclusivity. Folks can often feel as if they do not belong, which can lead to retention issues, among other things. In this webinar, we'll examine the importance of being an inclusive and impactful leader and share important tips and guidance to apply at your workplace. Key takeaways will include identifying the importance of an inclusive workplace, outline steps to become an inclusive leader, discuss how to create an inclusive workplace, and lastly, move from inclusive to impactful. It's a pleasure to introduce the presenter for today's webinar, Patricia Izek. Patricia, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Shanta. It's a pleasure to be introduced by you always. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you in this space and for you to spend your lunch hour with me, or depending on where you are, this next hour with me. Our agenda for today, I'm going to welcome you, which I just did, but I'm also going to introduce myself with more detail. I'm going to share a land acknowledgement and then some definitions. I'm a big proponent of definitions because it's really important for us to have common language. Who is a leader? What is inclusive? What do we mean by inclusive? What is impact? And then when we put all together, what is an inclusive leader and what does impactful inclusive leadership look like? We're going to look at the 21st century workplace as compared to that 20th century workplace, which so many are still trying to hang on to. I hope that this will encourage you to become that 21st century leader, and what the skills that are needed for you to proceed in that. So the listening skills, be curious, include equitably, own your bias, be culturally aware, be a collaborator, and lead with humility and authenticity. I will leave time at the end for you to submit those questions. Shanta will keep track of them for us, and then hopefully I will be able to address at least a few of them at the end of my presentation today. Okay, so here we go. So bienvenidos, welcome. My name is Patricia Izek. I am a first generation born and raised in the city of Chicago. My parents immigrated from Mexico in 1950 separately and settled there, and we all went to school there. Lived at home while we went to our undergrad and did our undergrad education. I share this with you because those were my formative years and really have shaped how I look at just about everything that I do. Now I have the good fortune of living in Minneapolis, so that's that first image. And my partner and I, David and I, have 3 children. And all 3 of them have followed in my footsteps and also my parents' footsteps. They have gone elsewhere, not left the country quite yet. But our eldest lives in Los Angeles. And I couldn't find an image that really shared Los Angeles with you. But of course, everyone knows that Hollywood is there. The other is Seattle, where our daughter Isabel lives. And then our daughter Emma lives in Chicago. So there are our 3 children, Aaron, Isabel, and Emma. And I just think that that's important as well, because it shows what I instilled and my husband instilled in our kids, right? And that is to be curious, to seek, and not to be afraid to venture out. So with that, I will go to the next slide. That's just a little bit about me. The land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that the University of Minnesota Twin Cities is built within the traditional homelands of the Dakota people. It is important to acknowledge the peoples on whose land we live, learn, and work as we seek to improve and strengthen our relations with our tribal nations. We also acknowledge that words are not enough. We must ensure that our institution provides support, resources, and programs that increase access to all aspects of higher education for American Indian students, staff, faculty, and community members. And I encourage you to do whatever it is that you can from wherever you are to help this come true. Now, just last week, I had the good fortune of being in Seattle for a conference, and I attended an opera there, something I don't do very frequently, but my daughter took me to see the Malcolm X opera, which was fantastic. And that made me think, what other land acknowledgements are there? And Minnesota Opera has one. So I just wanted to share this one with you. Though we have arrived here in a multiplicity of ways, we recognize our occupation on land that is of great historical, spiritual, and cultural significance to Dakota people. We also acknowledge the past and present harm done to Dakota, Anishinaabe, and other indigenous nations through the systematic forced removal of communities and the unjust seizure of their lands. We urge you to join us in reflecting in our place and in these histories and rectifying the erasure of indigenous people in our art form. So this can be something that you do as a leader, and just to recognize the land that we're on. And these are two very different ones, but I thought it was a good way for us to start and to just do this. So thank you for allowing me to do that. So now let's get to some of those definitions I promised that we would be sharing. So the first here is leader. And I often go to our good old Britannica because I think it's a wonderful dictionary. Someone who guides other people. Someone or something that is ahead of others in a race or a competition. And that's interesting, right? A competition. So you're already insinuating that it's a win-win or a win-loss rather. A powerful person who controls or influences what other people do. A person who leads a group, organization, country, etc. And that's the first time that influence comes into the definition. And I really like the use of influence. A person, group, or organization that is the best or most successful in some activity. Most successful, and I encourage you to think of the different ways that most successful can be defined, okay? So that's leader. Inclusive, here I go to Merriam-Webster. Broad in orientation or scope, covering or intended to cover all items, costs, or services, including everyone. Especially allowing and accommodating people who have historically been excluded because of their race, gender, sexuality, or ability. That accommodation is a very important aspect of leadership, I believe. Definitely part of inclusivity. Of or relating to education in which students with disabilities are included with the general student population, including the stated limits or extremes used post-positively. So Merriam-Webster brings up accommodation, individuals with disabilities, and really making sure that they are included. Impact, Oxford Dictionary this time. The powerful effect that something has on somebody or something. Impact of something to reduce or minimize. Impact of doing something. Impact on somebody, something. Impact of something on somebody or something, or the impact from something. So basically, it's that powerful effect that something can have on us, that ripple effect. So with those definitions in mind as we go forward now, let's take a look at the 21st century workplace that we are presently in. So it's no longer routine. I mean, that with COVID, which we are 3 years post-COVID, but still, it really did shake things up. We are also more diverse than we have ever been. We're more mobile, more innovative, more demanding in many ways, more collaborative in some ways, more flexible, and more tech savvy. Provides training and professional development. That's what that workplace will look like. Encourages ERGs and affinity groups for their employees. Offers flexible work arrangements so that everyone can feel included. Examines policies, processes, and procedures on a regular basis. And checks in regularly, not annually, the way we used to. And even better, I'm going to compare the two now for you. So here we have the 20th century leader compared to the 21st century leader on the right side. So focuses on themselves, and their leadership is about how good it will make them look. The 21st century focuses on the people they are serving and asks, how can the people I am leading succeed and grow? Cares about people if those people are serving the leader's needs. The 21st century cares about people, period. The 20th century operates from a fixed mindset and is not prepared to show their vulnerability associated with not knowing. So that leader will rarely say, I don't know, let me find out. Whereas our 21st century leader operates from the growth mindset and is comfortable with the vulnerability that comes with the statement, I do not know yet, right? Or will look to their experts that they have surrounded themselves with. I don't know, but would so-and-so please like to chime in? Inclusive. Going on, learns in a formal setting, and only when they are given the opportunity to learn because they are too busy to spend time learning how to be a better leader. 21st century is a proactive learner who recognizes the severe implications their leadership can have on people's lives, which is why they choose to be a lifelong student of leadership and continually learning for themselves. 20th century believes they are more intelligent and evolved than the people they lead. 21st century believes there is no limit to what people can achieve, irrespective of their role or position in the hierarchy. In fact, many 21st century leaders will dismantle hierarchy because they realize that really it is by inclusivity of everyone at every level that they will be better leaders. 6, dominates meetings and conversations, speaks over people, but is unaware of this trait and is great at telling their resources what to do. 21st century is a conscientious listener, actively inviting people to participate in conversations and enabling them to be autonomous. So in that active listening, they are learning and encouraging others to learn with them. Questions to shut down our 20th century leader. Convergent thinking, conversations. Does anyone disagree? They may not say with me, but often they do. Whereas the 21st century leader uses questions to open conversations. Divergent thinking. What might we be missing? Anybody else have an idea? Did I miss something, right? Invites others in. Number 8, uses storytelling to highlight their brilliance and their achievements. 21st century still uses storytelling, but it's to enable people to make sense of the vision, purpose, and values of the organization in a way that relates to the work the person is doing. They're also more willing to share their own story so that they are more connected, feel more connected with those that they lead, and also to show their vulnerability. 9, will do extraordinary things to save face, especially when things go wrong. The blame game, right? Driving some psychological safety and vulnerability and creating outcomes such as the Boeing 737 MAX disaster. 9, conscientiously creates psychological safety while maintaining high standards. And that's Dr. Amy Edmondson's high performance and learning zone. 20th century espouses long-term thinking, but acts only for the short term. 21st century both espouses and performs with the long-term front of mind. They are thinking beyond their tenure. 11, believes innovation belongs in their domain, as people lower in the hierarchy are not smart enough to innovate. 21st century believes that innovation is everyone's responsibility in the organization and actively cultivates it throughout all positions. And that's by inviting people, asking them to participate, and making sure that they are heard. 12, is unaware of the industrial age mental models that influence their behavior. 21st century consciously maintains awareness of their mental models and deliberately chooses mental models that are consistent with leading human beings. This list comes to us from a wonderful LinkedIn source, so you can, and all of it's at the end so that you can go ahead and look at what is said on each of these and further links to it. So as you can see, there is a difference. And the more we continue to move towards that 21st century leader, you will see that it is a more inclusive trait. So here are the 6 signature traits of an inclusive leader: curiosity, cultural intelligence, collaboration, commitment, courage, and cognizance. So we're going to look at each of these now moving forward here. Curiosity. Willing to ask questions, right? And often asking questions used to demonstrate that you didn't know something, and that was something that you didn't want to show or be vulnerable with those that you're leading. Now, asking questions is so important for an inclusive and impactful leader. Not afraid to be vulnerable and to admit, I do not know, but surround yourself with those that do know, and then giving them the opportunity to really have a voice. Seeing value in everyone and what they say and what they do. Cultural intelligence values diversity, wants to interact and understand the differences, right? So in that sense, it's not only making sure that your team represents different perspectives, different voices, different regions of the country, different countries, different institutions that you hire from, meaning that it's from maybe someone who went through community college, someone who went through a traditional 4-year, someone who took long breaks in their educational path. So all of this is valuing diversity. Someone who has a worldview. All of this is very, very important for you, because that individual is going to also demonstrate, hopefully, a level of patience. Collaboration, another ingredient that is most necessary. The more perspectives, the better. But remember, it's not easier. When we have difference of opinions, you also have to create and allow people to be able to have discussions and conversations that may be difficult at times. But a leader that knows how to collaborate and bring people together will be able to do this. Make sure everyone plays a role, and that's very important, so that everybody knows what their contribution can be and how it is that they can contribute. See their value and value their contribution. Often we invite people and we're so excited to have them, but what we really want them to do is to assimilate into the ways that we all have already established. A true collaborator will see their value and take a step and allow them to collaborate, to actually contribute in their own way. That is valuing their contribution. Commitment. It's really important that we must stay engaged. If not there, you cannot contribute. So it's important to understand that this commitment to stay and be present is so important. And also to know that results take time, especially these type of results that we're looking for when we're working in the workforce that is more diverse, more flexible, all that entire list that I shared with you at the beginning. It is very important that we realize that it's going to take time. Difference of opinions, difference of culture, difference of regions, difference of way we were educated, all of that make it so that it takes longer for us to reach a common ground where we can feel comfortable and where we can really begin to innovate and let ideas flow. But it takes that commitment to stay present and to be committed. Courage. The leader needs to be vulnerable. And you've heard this more than once already, but it is such an important aspect of good leadership. And you need to call it out also. When you see something that is just not appropriate or that you feel is not taking your team the path that you want them to go, you have to be willing to call it out, not only for yourself, but also for the team. That requires for you to really be attentive, to notice, to listen, to really understand what's going on. Be an ally when necessary and step up. Again, in order to be an ally, you have to be aware. And without that awareness, you will not know when to step in. Cognizance, and it's know yourself first and foremost. Listen to what you say. People listen to a leader, and it is so important to be thoughtful with your words and to really think about the impact that these words will have on others. Observe how you say it and do it. It is so important, the follow through, right? And to remember that people are actually really, really looking to you for this guidance. Be a conscious, active listener. If there's one thing that you can do, this one would be the one. So to listen. It means to be present, and it means to remove distractions. And how often are we not distracted, even when we are in meetings, right? Our phone is there, we're getting little messages or whatever, or you're even replying to emails. All of these things are distracting and they're noticed. Even in our rectangular world of today, people can tell if you're not really paying attention. Often people are off camera, sometimes for very good reasons. We understand not everybody has the same internet services or the capability to be able to look at documents and to maintain the bandwidth to be on camera. Sometimes you're just having an off day and can't be on camera. It's your 7th meeting of the day and you need to be off camera. But for the most part, it's really a good practice to stay and be on camera and to be as attentive as possible. Be present and remove those distractions as much as possible. It's challenging. We all know it's challenging, but it's an important message that you're sending to your team when you are there. Your body language is loud. You may not think so, but it truly is. And it says a lot. People can see. Now, often, for the majority of us who are working in Zoom now, we tend to have 2 screens. But you can tell when the screen that you're using and you're looking at it, it is because you're looking at a document pertaining to the conversation. But you can also tell when you go to something totally different and you're spending time on this for a significant amount of time, then all of a sudden you come back. You realize then that it is someone who has zoomed out, literally. So it's important. Our body language is loud, not only in person. Of course, we know that in person, but it's also loud in our screen, muted or not muted. People notice, and it's important for us. Notice their nonverbal cues. Also, as a leader, it's important for you to notice nonverbal cues from those you're speaking to. If you're losing your audience, it really is a big sign for you to just take a pause. And maybe it's time for a break, right? And that's very important as well. There are studies that show we cannot listen for very long periods of time. And yet that's the expectation that we have gone into. So be aware of that and realize that you need to give breaks. Questions should be open-ended to encourage conversation. Whenever you give a question where the reply is going to be a yes or a no, you're basically saying, I don't want to hear anything more, which at times, from a leader's perspective, it's necessary. All you need is a yes or a no. But in order to continue to learn and be that active listener, avoid those type of questions if you're in the mode of and you have the time. It is very important to listen to those that you lead because they help you set the path. Paraphrasing demonstrates your engagement. Sometimes people will say things, and the best thing that you can do is just paraphrase. One, to make sure that they know that you're listening, but two, to make sure that they are understood the way they want to be understood. Often we hear what we want to hear, right? Goes back to our biases, because that's how we want to proceed. But if you paraphrase, then you will understand whether, yes, you heard it correctly, yes, that's what they wanted you to hear, or whether it's all wrong and you need to start again. And at that point, then you would ask for them. Can you please explain it to me one more time? I apologize, I got it wrong. And then listen to understand, not to solve. And this is really hard because we are geared to solve problems. You know, everyone says a leader needs to solve problems, right? So as a leader, you're just already listening to find out, okay, what's the need? Who do I need to involve? And how do we solve it? Whereas sometimes all you need to do is listen to understand. And that takes time. And I know that time is very valuable, but it is so important for us to listen to understand and not to solve. You can solve later. And listen to learn, not to create a defense, right? Sometimes as we're listening, we're already saying, no, that's totally wrong. I don't say that, or I don't agree with that, or, you know, and it's just important. Why am I feeling defensive with this comment? Let me see. Let me investigate that. You know, and really continue to listen. It's important. And if you do all of these, whoever is speaking to you can tell that you are truly being an active listener. The other, to be curious, be authentic, right? I think it's so important to just show your curiosity, your willingness to learn, your willingness to try and understand something that you haven't been exposed to. And then now you know it's time for you to learn some more. It's good if you offer yourself first, like introduce yourself, tell your background, whatever it is you're comfortable sharing, and then allow others to do the same. And to include equitably. And this is something that I think is super important. It is important to invite others that are usually not included. And that's the moment to pause, right? If you're gathering a new team or making you're going to launch a new project or something, think of those, of course, that you want to include because of their proven track record. But remember, that proven track record is based on the opportunity these individuals have had to establish a track record. There are others in your organization, I am certain, that have not had the opportunity to establish a proven track record. So it would be wonderful to include them as well, to give them that opportunity to be able to say, I worked on this project, so that then the next time they will be considered for another project. So I think we often forget because we go to those who have a proven track record. Remember, we have to start somewhere. So invite others, usually not included. Mention the individual with the original thought. And I know everyone has heard this one, but it happens so much still. So it's really important for you as a leader. And that goes to being that active listener, right? You hear someone say something and immediately someone repeats it without even a breath being taken. And that person begins to get the accolades. And it's important for you to say, that's wonderful, X. I'm so glad you brought that up. But why? I think you said it perfectly the first time. And there's a way to do it so that it's really confirmed that you are listening and that you are being inclusive and giving the mention to the original thought, to the person who had the original thought. And share information broadly. It's so important to be transparent, or as transparent, excuse me, as you possibly can be. I know that at times it is difficult. I know that at times as a leader, there are things that you feel you cannot share. And often leaders will have a smaller group that they confide in and they have conversations with. And those individuals should be good individuals that will encourage you to be as transparent as possible. There are many things that can be shared, and even that alone, speaking to everyone and saying, we're working on the response to this issue that has occurred. We wish could be more transparent at this time, but until we have that formulated, we cannot be. Even that, letting people know, we know you want to know about this subject, this topic, this project, and we will share with you as soon as we are able to. People understand that, but not saying anything is not inclusive. What not saying anything about a topic says you do not have the capacity to know about it yet. And it is, or the knowledge or the smartness, or however you want to say it, it is only for us here to know about it. But I think to acknowledge that, this is something we know you're curious about. I would be curious as well in your position. Please allow me the time to gather all the information to get this information out to everyone. That is the transparency really that most people just want. They don't expect you to share everything with them, but to acknowledge that they are curious and that they feel that they should know something is very important if you want to be that leader. Other tips. Okay. Own your bias. We are all biased, and it's important for you to know yours. I have been on search committees, and I often say, if there is a candidate who walks in that's a first-generation Mexican-American born and raised in Chicago, it's going to be tough. So I say it out loud, say them out loud and share them because it's important. It diminishes the bias almost immediately for yourself. Sometimes it makes others sort of giggle, laugh, or whatever, but they will help you to own your bias. That's on the search committee. But we have biases that show up in other ways as well. And it's important for you to recognize them. And those may be, as I just mentioned earlier, you're launching a new project, you're selecting a new team for whatever the purpose of the team is. And if you're the only one making that selection, every single one of those selections will have your bias in it. One of the things that I recommend in this instance is to share this, bring somebody else on board to help you make the selection. And ask yourself, who are we missing? Whose perspective are we missing? Who would we benefit from bringing on board at this stage, right? Because that will help you work through your bias. If you don't ask this, you will act on your bias, and the studies show it, including myself. So it is something that I try very hard not to make selections of individuals on my own, because inevitably I will act on my own bias and probably miss a very important voice. Be culturally aware. Be aware that we live in a very strong, dominant culture. And everything has been supported for this dominant culture to succeed, and it has stood the test of time. So it's important for us to be aware of it and avoid acronyms, jokes, and outdated sayings. This is very, very important for us to be aware of these things. But that dominant culture makes all of this okay. And so we have to ask ourselves, in whatever stage you are in, if you're talking to a group of people and you begin to use acronyms and just sort of take a breath, say, oh, excuse me, and say it all out. Okay. And if you can't remember it in the moment, say, I apologize, I can't remember every word of this acronym. Does anybody remember it right now? And include others to come in and to help you to remember some of those acronyms. Jokes, for the most part, unless they're about numbers, I would not engage in them because a joke is always at the expense of another. And no offense to numbers, but I think you understand what I mean. And outdated sayings. Check some of the things that you say. So many are just inappropriate in today's world for that 21st century leader. We have to be, some may say, yes, we're overly sensitive. I don't, whatever you want to call it is fine. But the reality is that you want to be respectful of everyone in today's world. And yes, we have evolved. And I think it's important for us, for those who want to be these, incredible leaders of the 21st century. That's what we need. We need people to be aware of things that just no longer are okay to use. Important to be a collaborator, reach beyond the comfort zone, and that can sometimes be difficult because the comfort zone is easy and usually faster, and it gets us results, right? So then, I could do this on my own, right? I could do this faster. I could get this done. But it is important for us, if you really want to be that collaborator, to really reach out. And it's to be that inclusive leader and to think of who hasn't been tapped recently, who hasn't ever been tapped. Who are the new folks that just joined our organization this past year? Make sure you meet them, invite them, hold open office hours. I think that would be fantastic. So I really, really to reach beyond the comfort zone. And I know it takes time, and time is often the culprit. So who's missing and who should be here, right? Nothing about us without us is for us. So it doesn't matter what a beautiful program you're working on, if it is about a certain group of individuals, about certain people, folks, if they're not part of it, it is not truly for them. So nothing about us without us is for us. And that's an African proverb, I believe. Lead with humility and authenticity. Look in the mirror, and really see yourself. And I think that that's really important. And true leaders are not afraid of who they see. They work with who they are, and they really show up and are not afraid to lead. It is really something that I really give a lot of credit to when I see good leadership. It is something to be praised. Mm-hmm. Own yourself and your errors. And we all know that we all have lists of errors. And with errors, and when we commit them, the best thing we can do is just apologize. Sorry, I apologize. And I will do better. And that's it. If you add an explanation after the apology, but I didn't mean it, or I didn't intend anything like that, negates the apology. So it's really important to if you commit an error, apologize, period. And I also want to talk a little bit about our nice culture. Because it's important for us to try and move that nice culture to a kind culture. And being nice is being polite, pleasant, and agreeable. And we often think that's exactly great. That's wonderful. But it can also be rude, aggressive, or dismissive. And I think that often when we're so caught up in being nice, we don't realize that that's the way it can come off. It can be superficial and signal an avoidance of challenging topics, and can keep a team from being authentic and creative. So it can really affect the team if we really refuse to step in and have those difficult conversations and allow everyone to have input and an opportunity to share their idea, because we want to keep things polite and pleasant and agreeable, and we don't want anyone to disagree. Then what we're really saying is, no, yours is going to cause some disagreement, and we don't have time for that. And so we're just going to do this. So basically what you have said, you've been dismissive. And what that being dismissive diminishes the value of that individual, what they're bringing to the table, and much more. So it is really important. We know we like nice, and this isn't just Minnesota nice; it's nice in general. But being kind is an alternative. So here we go. It's more compassionate, empathetic, relational, and intentional. We can it's physically better for us also. There's studies that show this, and as I remind you that all this information is in references at the end. The brain releases the hormone called oxytocin. It lessens the stress hormone of cortisol. So it has been studied by the medical profession, and that show that kindness is better. Not sure how the study was done, but the result that's there for you to check out. Is an act based on compassion and authentic concern for another person. Like everything worth doing, it takes time and practice. So how would this look? It's a team meeting. Someone wants to participate, but you know that this person, what they're going to say to on the team, don't agree with at all, and there's going to become an unpleasant situation. So as a leader, you're the one that now has to set the stage. And one of the best way to do it is to be vulnerable yourself. Say, you know, I have often had ideas that were not well met by others. I have always appreciated the opportunity given to me to be able to contribute. So in that light, I'm going to ask for patience from everyone, and I'm going to ask everyone to keep an open mind and to be active listeners. And we're going to go around one more time and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be heard. And start with those who are going to be the ones who start what may potentially start confrontation, because it's going to be important for you to be able to help that individual to get their ideas out. So very important to ask for compassion, for empathy. It is just, the whole meeting will more likely go better. Not that a solution will come out at the end of that meeting. Often it'll be more work for many people, and that is why often we avoid including many. But as I remind you from the list before, we're a much more diverse workforce than we have ever been. What we're striving for is to be leaders, not from the 20th century, but to really be leaders of the 21st century that are going to be leaders that are going to not only lead teams, but are going to be inclusive and impactful in the work that they do, meaning that they will have lasting effects, positive effects for individuals that will feel that they were really thought of in a compassionate way, empathetic way, and that were given the opportunity to really succeed in their roles under the leadership of you. Okay, so I'm going to, with that, so what we're trying to create is impact that will be lasting for our leaders. So now I have left plenty of time. Gracias very much. Questions, my email, if you have any questions, my LinkedIn. So I hope there's some questions out there from us. We have a great audience. So there's all the references for you. Please make sure you check them all out. And I hand it back to Shanta.
Yes, thank you so much for this insightful material you shared with us today. I do want to apologize in advance if I don't get to everyone's question, specifically some of the situational questions. Please send those to ccapsinfo@umn.edu, and we can pass those along to Patricia. And Courtney, if you could put that in the chat as well, that would be wonderful. I will go to the first question here is, what would you say to an authentic self or person who may not be curious by nature?
Mm. Um, I find it hard to believe that you're not curious, but it is possible. So I'm going to say that. But I think what it is that maybe it hasn't been labeled as curiosity for you, but an individual will often have an idea and be thinking of that idea, and that's curiosity. It really is. So I think give yourself credit. I think you are curious, but it probably hasn't been seen as curiosity for you. But should you truly, truly have no curiosity, then make it a point to ask questions. You know, put it down, write it down so that you develop more of a habit of being more curious. And it's curious in in a thoughtful manner. So it's asking questions that indicate that you have been listening. And I think that's really important as well. So it's going back to being that active listener, and within your listening, tell yourself, I would like to ask a question. And then, that will prompt you to really be listening, and so that you can jot down the question. So it's an exercise, a muscle. Mhm.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
So we have a comment here. We love the content, but how does it excuse me, does it apply equally to both nonprofit and for-profit organizations?
I think there may be some adjustments that you would have to make, but I think it could work for both. I really do. In the end, we all want to get whatever our goal accomplished. If it's a nonprofit, it may be to provide the tools to be a better educator, or that you're helping students in an area, or a nonprofit in ecology or something like that. But it still is the same. You have leaders there, you have a workforce there that's going to be more diverse. And what you want to be is that impactful leader that's going to really have a lasting effect with those that you lead. So I think it's applicable to both. Thank you. That was a good question.
Yes, thank you. So here's a situational question. I have a manager who seems to have space and interest in being a more equitable, inclusive leader. However, they have disclosed they are neurodivergent in ways that create obstacles to reading emotions, body language, and slowing down. They have space for feedback, but I struggle to offer feedback that empowers them to do their own work to achieve a more inclusive management strategies. What
Mhm.
advice might you have for this situation?
That's a great question. And I think the fact that your leader has been vulnerable and shared that information with you speaks very highly of them. So they're basically inviting you to be part of the team and to help lead here. So one of the things is, I would personally have a meeting with the leader, thank them for this opportunity, and ask them, how would you best like me to help in this situation? Would you like me to um, interrupt at a certain amount of time and make sure that everybody's being included? Would you like me to write a note? Would you like me to private chat you? How can I best be a partner in this for you? Someone who has done that is really a true leader. I mean, they really are asking for help. So that's great that you're trying to figure out how to do it. But remember, nothing about you without you is for you. So this person, you have to include them and talk to them and say, I love that you were vulnerable. Thank you so much. How can I best support this and be that and help you be our leader? Mhm,
Thank you, Patricia.
mhm,
So our next question, I have heard colleagues use the phrase, let's have a powwow. This feels
mhm,
culturally insensitive to me. What are your thoughts
mhm.
and suggestions on how to discuss?
Yes, that would fall under the category of what was it that I could? It's just outdated. Common words, phrases that are outdated. And a powwow is a significant gathering. And and to use it frivolously in this manner is not giving it the respect that it should have. So there are many things that you can do instead of that, and it's to think about, well, we're going to have a gathering, we need to meet, and we're going to convene, or just to be more thoughtful about the words that we use. And if you're the one who used it, apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't, and I will use a different word here, more appropriate one. Mhm. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's important for us.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, Next question. How do you respond to people saying things like, I just try to be nice to everyone, or when discussing controversial topics, say, if everyone was nice to each other, it would be fine. To your
Mhm.
point, nice is not enough.
Nice is not enough. No. Um, and I know it's really hard to have difficult conversations. It takes a lot of emotional energy for us to be in those spaces. But to be nice is very similar to me in that situation, is very similar to me when someone says, I don't see color, right? And we, during the late, I think it was around the 70s, early 80s, when we were really one human race, no one saw color. And And it lasted for a while, but really what we weren't seeing was the individual. We weren't seeing you. And people of color don't get to put it on and take it off. That we are this all the time. And by not seeing us, you're saying we're not important, we're not valuable. Being nice is the same thing. This may be uncomfortable for you to have this conversation, but if you are in a space now where you have either been invited or have just happened to be there, to be vulnerable is the best thing, is to just say, I feel uncomfortable right now. My hands are beginning to sweat, and I wish I were better versed in this conversation. And I'm going to ask for grace. And if you will allow me to just listen, I would greatly appreciate it. Right? To just even say that, to communicate that, I think you're sending the message that I really don't know enough, but I'm putting myself here and I'm here to learn. And I think that's important. Now, you cannot rely on learning from people of color at all times. So you're going to have to do your own homework. And I think a really good ad at the end is, thank you for allowing me to be here. I am committing to doing some homework now, right? So that it's not just on give, give, give. No, now I'm going to go do my own work. And next time I hope to engage in the conversation with you. And I understand nice is the way out. Nice is everybody stays okay, but we're not, nice doesn't move us forward.
Yeah, I love that. It doesn't reach the many levels, right? That is there.
Exactly, Shanta.
So the next question, any advice for being a formal versus informal leader? I lead a cross-functional team that does not report to me. Any differences you'd share with the different types of leaders?
Okay. Um, so that's a tough one because I have a question. Do you ever interact with them, and how do you interact with them? I guess would be my question. I really believe that formal versus informal, this applies regardless. It's being that good listener, being inclusive, trying to remember what will create the best impact for the team to work with and to move forward. But really is to be that listener whenever you have that opportunity to be with them. Formal, I'm not sure if you mean that only you're providing information and they only listen. If there's any opportunity for you to create space where you convene and everybody has an opportunity to introduce themselves, I highly encourage in those first meetings that you ask people to share a little bit about themselves. Now, I forget what number showed up today, but everybody knows that came today that I have 3 children if you showed up on time, right? And that they live in different cities. And then the next time you see me, that's a starting point, right? Besides the business we need to get to.
Yes, thank you. Let's see here. What do we have next? At times I've experienced employees who feel we as a community are too sensitive, and it wasn't like that. How do you suggest helping others understand who don't feel like they should censor themselves for others?
Okay. Um, it's really when you think, and I think I did say it, difference is not easier and it's not faster. And I think that's sort of the growing pains that we're going through right now. At our communities of leadership used to look very similar. They were basically white men, and things ran really smoothly. And they made decisions, and things functioned, and they were considered incredible leaders. And then it slowly began to include women. And oh my goodness, things are too sensitive, and they're asking for so much, and it takes longer, and things are much more on an emotional basis, and so on and so forth. And I feel that that's where we are now, that we have realized the value of diversity, especially in the business sector, and that we realize that from the creative perspective, that it's a better way to also be a leader, to include as many voices as possible. But that comes at a price as well. And that is that, yes, we all are going to have to be less sensitive, and we are going to have to be more inclusive. And we're going to also have to be more willing to listen to learn and to sometimes be more thoughtful before we speak. And it's not that you cannot say what you want to say, but there are ways of saying it so that it is heard the way you really mean it. And I think most individuals, if they took the time to think about it, they would rethink the way the things that they said. So it's really important for us to be those good listeners and to listen to learn and to then include others and encourage them to do the same.
Great answer, as always.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna move on here. Again, I apologize to anyone for if we missed any of your questions. Again, please send them to ccapsinfo@umn.edu, and we're happy to pass them along to Patricia. Um, and So yes, the College of Continuing and Professional Studies now offers flexible workforce development solutions designed to equip employees with the targeted knowledge and skills your organization needs. Our programs include industry-driven bachelor's and master's programs, along with 12 non-credit certificates and over 80 individual courses. If you or someone in your organization would like to learn more, please schedule a consultation with our business development representative, Beth Laurie. And there is a QR code there as well for you all. And next slide, please.
Yes, indeed. Of course, I lose my cursor. There we go.
Wonderful, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, we will send a link to the webinar recording within a week of today's webinar. The recording will be posted to our CCAPS webinar archive as well as our CCAPS YouTube page. We also welcome feedback, so please use the QR code listed to provide any suggestions for future productions. The University of Minnesota employees are now also eligible to receive well-being points for listening to our webinars. Please view the link or in the form on the second slide. Oh, I'm sorry, second to last slide of our webinar presentation. The link is also there. And the college's contact information is listed on the last slide if you'd like to learn more. So thank you all again for joining us today. Thank you again, Patricia, for joining us. It's always a delight to have you here.
Thank you, Shanta, and thank you everyone who joined us today. I really appreciate it. Feel free to reach out.